Hi friends, this is Praveen. Back to our next topic. Last topic we have discussed about the MySQL functions, which were about to know how to connect to the database through PHP. So further continuation to that topic, we are going to learn about how you're going to make a project with connecting to PHP through database and allowing the application to use it. So the project that we are going to learn is about something like this. We are going to work with Crud. It's an application which can create, read, update, delete. So what are we waiting for? Let's crack the code. So what we am going to do is I need a particular file to save. So I'm going to save it in htdocs file. Before we start project, you should make sure that your server is running. In my case, my server is running. Okay, so I'm going to take htdocs, and this is where I'm going to work with your day2crud, and I'm going to create a PHP page by using a text document. Double click, file, save as, and I'm going to work with something called create db.php. So I've got a file called createdb.php, and this is my file, which should be empty at this point of time. So edit this and let's start the code. So this is your PHP tag and this is your closing tag. So I'm going to connect with your database by using mysql_connect, and it needs the following argument. It needs a localhost. Sorry, if you can't remember it, I can show you that the connections it needs your host name, your username, and the password. So I'm going to start connecting with the host name that I'm going to generate is localhost, and the username I'm going to use is root, and the password I'm going to use is empty. Let's see how do I decide this connections is. If you can go to phpMyAdmin with web interface. So I'm just opening the browser here, and let's get started with typing localhost phpMyAdmin. Yes, and this is your host name. So hit on enter. And once you go to MySQL database, you can see the particular things called user account. In this area, you're trying to connect with username root, the host name is localhost, and the password is empty. With this connection, you're going to create an all privilege connection. So let's start by opening your hosting names. So I'm going to open a PHP file, localhost. In my case, I saved my files in htdocs crud. So I'm going to start with typing this as crud and hit on enter, and this is what the page we are starting with, createdb.php. At this point of time I have no errors, but when I go with some wrong values, suppose I've got like password is wrong, this is not my password, and when I save this and execute the same thing on a browser, I get some error saying MySQL connect access denied for user root localhost using password. Yes, the problem was with password. And let's try one more error. I'm going to go with giving a wrong host name. If you give a wrong host name, then it's supposed to give you a different error, and the error states that PHP network address failed, get info address, no such host is known. And moreover, so this is something we have to follow. You need to pass a correct values. Okay, so as I said you that this will not work, so you need to give a proper connection. That should be a localhost, and username is root, and the password that you have to maintain is empty. And I could write this and execute this particular file by opening a browser and clicking on refresh. The connections have been established. So this is where I've been connected to my database here. So this can also be written in something like this. You can use a variable $host is equal to localhost and $user. I'm going to take this as root, and $password. I'm going to create this as empty password, and I'm going to supply the following variables into the arguments. So I'm going to use $host, $user, $password, and let's try to run this on a browser. When I run this on a browser, the browser doesn't show any error. So you can possibly write any ways you like. And moreover, if something goes wrong with the connections, for example, I go with wrong details of a hostname. If something goes wrong, and when I refresh this is giving me a complete problem with giving me a warning error stating MySQL connect get info address failed, no such host is known. And one more problem I do see is it is completely giving the path where exactly I'm executing my files, which is locating in examp htdocs crud createdb.php, which is completely I have to be showing you that the security is not here, because this is something you're showing your local path or the live environment, that it is displaying the complete area so that hacker can easily identify where in the world of coding or where in the directory you're in sitting at. So I don't encourage this. So what we do is we'll just block this error by keeping this in front of it at the rate. Okay, and when I do this, even though there could be a chances of getting executing errors, I don't see any errors. That was completely been good, but the problem is I'm not sure whether I'm connecting to my database or not. So for these situations, what I will do is I'm going to keep this into a variable, like let's say $connection is equal to, and I'm going to write an if condition stating if $connection is established, it will return, this condition will return true. So if condition got established, I'm going to write echo you have been connected to database, so else, or we'll just write echo sorry could not establish connection, something gone wrong, something gone wrong. So this is my error, probably I'm writing it, and we'll save it and just go run it and check whether we have connected or not. When I refresh, this is going to give me sorry could not establish connection, something gone wrong. So the possible reasons is it's just claiming something gone wrong, but what could be the reasons that it gone wrong? Is it because of username, or is it because of hostname, or is it because of password? It's not completely describing, it's just saying what I have written. It's not proving or it's not explaining what is exactly going wrong. Is it because of not able to connect with hostname, or is it because of password it's not able to connect? For this is a case, I'm not going to take a chance of writing here. What I will do is I'm just going to change the method by writing like this, unable to connect. Reason could be I'm just going to make it bold, and we'll just make it bold here, and we'll just go with a colon, and let's see what I can write here. Till now we have written here, I'm going to establish this, and it's going to say this as unable to connect, reason could be, and I'm going to write a break and just going to go with a concatenation and say something like die, and I'm going to say MySQL underscore error number, or else we'll just go with error number is equal to MySQL underscore error. Now what is die going to do is die would only execute its errors when error is not, or when connection is not established. This else part will open and die will connect, and die is a predefined function. Now what exactly is going to die do? Let's see. I'm going to write something like, going here, echo hi there, and this is something apart from if condition. We are not in if condition, we are out of if condition, and if I do not write something in die and just go for writing this MySQL underscore error. So if I'm going to write like this, what happens? Let's see. And when I execute this, it's going to explain you the possible reasons, and let's make a break here. Okay, so I'm using a break, and you can see this is something displaying your error number, which is 202, and this is something I don't like to be explained with error number, but yeah, you can use it. Is equal to the possible reason of error is we are trying to see PHP network get info address, no such host is known. So I was very much sure what exactly went wrong, because it's claiming that host name is not known. But let's see what we can solve it about. I'm going to write this back to localhost. Okay, and let's try to refresh this. Now the error is being changed to 1045 access denied. So the possible reason of explaining is very clear, and it's neither not giving me any E directory and all those things. But moreover, when you can't connect to database, so if you can't connect to database means your project will not work properly. So if none of the project of your database connections have been established, further printing methods should be halted. So this is where I use die. What this die going to do is, if this gets executed, further printing methods will get blocked. See, it's just blocking all the errors or all the business things. Like for example, let's say I'm going to give a guide, just kind of example. See, if you can't connect to database, now if you can't connect to database means you're probably not able to log in, or you're probably not able to register. So further, whatever is being printing here, we have all the footer printing, this will all get blocked. That's what I'm showing here, that the printing method we have is hi there. Let's say this is a footer of your website. Is it getting blocked? Yes, there's nothing like hi there. Okay, so that's what I'm trying to say here. So moreover, if you understood what exactly is the problem is very much precise, like it is the problem with the password. So I'm going to solve the password either, and this is when I see that I'm able to connect. Okay, so I'm not going to use this, so I'm going to remove it. Okay, next you are being connected to database server. That's pretty well. And moreover, things to understand is, if you're on a non-standard port number, just use your port number. Okay, you have to go with your port number in searching. For example, I'm going to go with my port number 8088. So this is my port number of a host name. So if you're on a non-standard port number, if you're in a standard port number, that's okay, you can use it. Okay, so with this I'm completely connected to my database. Okay, so next thing I would like to share with you is few more connections. So let's see how do you control other connections apart from the predefined. So for this, you can go to PHP MyAdmin, go to your user account, and just scroll it down and click on add user account. And when it is claiming about the username, I'm going to say, let's say we have do not, first of all, you should understand, you are not going to use this in a live hosting. You have a different connections, because it has to be protected, nobody has to know it. If for example this is a Facebook website, Facebook has its own hostname and username and password. If you owns or you know that, you can connect to database of something like Facebook or something like Flipkart. So at this point of time, we have to change the connections to your remembrance. This is a default connections. This could be not probably using in real time. So how do you change your connections is, go to your database, which is PHP MyAdmin, go to user account, and just go for add user account. And this is where I'm going to go with username is, let's say I'm going to say something like praroot. That's my praroot. That's something I chose as my username. And I'm going to go with localhost only as my host name. And the password that I'm going to use is the generated password. And this is a password. If you don't like, you can just keep generating until you like. Let's say I have this as my password, and I'm going to go with pasting this here, which is my new password. Okay, and that's got pasted there. And the username we have is praroot, which I'm going to use this as here. And the host name is same, localhost, which I have already given you as localhost. Okay, so once we do this, you have to go down, create database with name, with same name, and grant all privileges, yes. and grant all privileges on a wildcard, which is important also. Check all. Now with this connection and with this password, you can do something like all things, but you cannot delete with these connections, and you cannot drop any database or table, or you cannot delete any user. So with these connections we have a restricted privileges, and I just go and say here go. Now when I've been settled with these connections, you can see my user account has a new connection, which is something to do with prior root, localhost, and the connections of this password is yes, means you have a password and you have not been given with all privileges like previous. You've been doing everything you want, but you cannot drop or delete tables. Let's see whether I'm able to connect or not. So we are going to go with save this file because it's still right. I'm going to save it. Now go and execute in your project. I'm going to refresh this, and you've been connected to this database. So it's still saying I've been connected to my database server. So if there is a sensitivity, yet if you can't just you have to write the password as it is. It's an uppercase, but you're giving a lowercase. Save this, refresh. One silly mistakes that will lead you not to connect your base database. So it's saying access denied. So I do understood now that I can connect with my database with the privileges given, and with these connections I'm going to be able to do everything query needs, but I cannot delete or drop details. Okay, now that you have understood how to create the connections with the different port number or with the same thing, but at this point of time, never mind, I'm going to use a default connections because this has to be on a default on a training basis. So let's go and refresh the page. Now I do understand that I'm connected to database server. So when I'm connected, I don't want to speak with the customer, so I'm doing this connection and I'm sitting as an empty idle. So you can see that if the page is white, you've been connected. So if you're connected, you're actually on a PHP admin here on a global. You haven't selected your database. So once you are on a connection of database, you should go and create your database. So to create database, what I will do is I'm going to go to the editor and go and write something like $SQL is equal to create database. Let's say I'm going to create Crud. This is my database name, and I'm going to write a query. If to run the query, actually you have to write this query in a query box like here, but to run the query you need to go with in PHP as a MySQL underscore query, MySQL underscore query of $SQL. Now what it will do is, if you can probably able to run this query correctly, it will return true. So if it returns true, I'm going to write database got created successfully. Okay, else what could be the reason that you cannot connect to database? So I'm going to write the same story here by copying this line and just pasting it here and say something like this: unable to connect. Reason could be these functions will be inbuilt, which can help me out to understand why you're not able to connect or why you're not able to create database. So let's go and create it. Let's refresh. Now it's saying database got created successfully. Okay, now that the database got created, you can go and see in your PHP admin by refreshing this on a PHP admin URL. Click on enter. Now you can see that the database we have created just now is a name called Crud, and it exists. Now if you refresh this for the second time, what happens is database is already existing. So this will be printing this method, and you can see that it is explaining that 107 can't create database already exists. So this is where I've got my issues, and it is helping me out. Okay, so let's get into started with this subject. That now you have got your, you have got your connections, you have got created your database. As you can see here, you have created your database. Okay, so we have done creating your database. So let's try to go with further subject to know what exactly else things we can do. So things you should understand is, with this paper you have already connected to your server and you have got your database created. Okay, so let's get create another page. I'm going to go for, let's say I'm going to go with a page name called connect, okay, and edit this page. Now the page name we have is connect, so I'm going to go and change this with something called connect. Okay, so what am I going to write in connect is, I'm going to go to the connect.php and I'm going to remove all these things. Okay, and let's try to go for, instead of going such a lengthy way, you can write here only, or die. See, if connection has been established perfectly, it will run, or means if the connection haven't got established, die would take place its method. So I'm going to write MySQL underscore error number, and that's something as a symbol I want as is equal to here. Error number is equal to MySQL underscore error. So let's see how could I help it myself. So if I give it a wrong password and say go to connect.php, it's giving access denied. So I'm going to remove this and just go and run this. Now I've been connected to server. See, with this connections, you're being here, not here, but you're on a server. Okay, now once that you have created your database, you have to select this database in GUI tool. This is where I'm called as a GUI tool. When you click, it means that you're being on your database. So how do you do that in PHP? Well, let's try to open your editor, and I'm going to go with $db name. DB name is equal to, the database name is Crud, so I'm writing here, and I'm going to write here as MySQL underscore select underscore DB of the database name is DB name. Okay, if connected, or if you have been not able to select your database, you should throw me an error like this. Okay, so let's see how the error is going to be following up. I've got my wrong host name, I've got my wrong password, and I've got my wrong database. So let's go and execute the page and refresh. First problem is, it is telling me that no such host name is there. So I have to solve the host name. So this is my host name, which it got solved. Let's try to go and refresh this. Now I do see the password is wrong. So I'm going to go and remove this and give the correct password. Now refresh this. The next error I am able to say is unable to unknown database Crud. So this is not my database because I didn't create it, I created Crud. So when I'm going to go with a proper name DB, it's trying to select DB, so this will not work. So when I refresh this, I haven't got any error. Means where exactly are you? Right now you're not in databases, sorry, you're not on a global one, you're not on a global scale, you're being on your database. This is where you are being on a database. So what next? You need to create a tables. So to create tables, we'll just follow up this subject on the next video. I think that you have understood everything of how you connect your servers on database selection. Okay guys, thank you, bye bye.